It's my nerd world, and welcome to it, a Star Wars show. First 2 episodes of Obi Wan Kenobi. I'll share with you my spoiler-free thoughts for those that haven't watched it yet. A lot of news, new footage coming out of Celebration in Anaheim. However, for me personally, some of the biggest things that came out yesterday didn't come from Celebration. I'll share with you what those are. As always, you can email me, talkshownerd@gmail.com. Now, let's get to this week's episode.
They're coming. Stay hidden, or we will not survive.
Leave us alone.
When the time comes, he must be trained.
Like you trained his father? You still want Kenobi. He's gone.
Maybe you've been looking in the wrong places. I want every lowlife and bounty hunter to squeeze him. You can't run, Obi Wan! You can't escape him!
It is my Nerd World, a Star Wars show, and I am your host, Jon Justice. Glad you are here for another episode. Again, got a lot of ground to cover this week, and not surprising, I think you'll just get one show this week unless something earth-shattering happens to come out of Star Wars Celebration between now and Sunday, as I record this on Friday. I want to share with you some of my initial thoughts on the Obi Wan Kenobi live-action show now that we've seen the first 2 episodes. I got up at 1:45 this morning to watch it before I ended up having to go into work. We got an Andor trailer, which looks fantastic. Holy cow, I'm hyped for Andor. I said it before, I'm going to say it again. That show's going to be something truly special. I think Obi-Wan is too. Again, not disappointing, but man, that Andor trailer really floored me. Now, on top of that, there wasn't a lot much else coming out of Star Wars Celebration. There was a teaser for The Mandalorian Season 3, which we know now will debut, I believe, in February of 2023. Andor is going to drop on August 31st, and I'll have more details on that coming up. Mandor Season 3 continuing to follow the adventures of Grogu and the Mandalorian. From the footage that we saw, it looks like Bo-Katan, getting right into it. Bo-Katan is going to be the villain, doing that thing with my fingers in the show, which isn't all that surprising, at least the way it was teed up in the footage that people at Star Wars Celebration in Anaheim saw. At one point, it showed her sitting on the throne, looks like at Mandalore, in Mandalore. Not a throne that we're familiar with. I believe they showed that throne later on in the episode. We obviously know that she is unhappy that Din Djarin has the Darksaber, and taunting him a bit in this teaser that was shown there of telling Grogu, you know, your daddy isn't the only Mandalorian. Obviously excited for The Mandalorian Season 3. I love that show. Also got a little bit of information on the code-named show, Grammar Rodeo, we now know is called Star Wars Skeleton Crew. It's supposed to be a send-up of the emblem films from the 80s and 90s involving a handful of younger characters. We were told by Dave Filoni yesterday that that show is not made for kids any more than Stranger Things is, or any more than the Clone Wars was made for kids. And it's interesting, too, because I'm really, like, looking back at the Book of Boba Fett, that series seems to be the most geared towards younger kids, even though you wouldn't think it, or the younger ages. than everything else that we've received so far. I'd almost put it kind of there with Resistance, and I'm sure people would disagree with me, but in the way that was shot and filmed, and I'm not going to go into that again, it certainly seemed like it was geared towards bringing in a younger audience. And having Robert Rodriguez at the helm, especially given his Spy Kids movies, makes a bit of sense in that. And Star Wars was always initially supposed to be for children, as George Lucas always said. However, with this skeleton crew, Jude Law starring in this show, they showed a little piece of artwork, showed a pretty large freighter ship with the silhouettes of some of the young characters on the show. It looks like it could be a lot of fun, and there's an article that we'll read from Empire Online that has a few more details with regard to that. So that's a bit of the news that came out of Star Wars Celebration. I have more to share as we get into Andor. I want to talk about that in a little bit more detail, and some really fascinating commentary outside of Celebration coming from Kathleen Kennedy, which I'm most excited about, being a fan of cinema. All right, so that being said, let's go ahead and dive into, and I want to share with you some of my initial instinctive reactions to Obi Wan Kenobi, especially given that last night, prior to watching Obi-Wan this morning, I went out and saw Top Gun Maverick. And you might be going, what does that have to do with Star Wars? Well, oddly, it does.
This is not going to go the way you think.
First off, run, don't walk to see Top Gun Maverick. Everything you've heard about how good that movie is 100% true. I saw a tweet, and I don't think I mentioned it on last week's show, but I totally get it now. A Star Wars fan had tweeted that Top Gun Maverick was everything that they would have wanted to see in a Star Wars film about fighter pilots. And again, if I said this on last week's show, I apologize. I thought it was in between the weeks. Be that as it may, I totally understand what they're saying now, and I can't help but wonder, while my main theory as to why Rogue Squadron got put to the side was that, based off of Kathleen Kennedy's comments in the Vanity Fair piece from last week, they want Rogue Squadron to fit into other material as they provide more connectivity between all of the different content that Lucasfilm and Disney is creating. And we get into a little bit more of that in this Empire Online article. However, based off of that little promo with Patty Jenkins and roller skates that came out a couple of years ago, and her wanting to write a story about fighter pilots, holy cow, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a lot of similarities between Top Gun Maverick and what may have happened in Rogue Squadron. That being said, Top Gun Maverick has a lot in common with Star Wars A New Hope. That's all I'm going to say. I mean, a lot in common. In all the best possible ways. If you like space battles and action, go see that movie. If you're a Star Wars fan, go see that movie. You will not be disappointed. Now, that being said, it did provide me a rather interesting juxtaposition, going and seeing Top Gun Maverick in the theater and then watching Obi Wan Kenobi. It did not ruin my experience watching Obi Wan Kenobi by any stretch of the imagination. However, it did highlight, if I had a complaint, and it's not really a complaint, it's okay, but the comparison of cinema versus live action. Live action used to be, live action shows, action shows, okay? They were always hindered by technology, in my opinion, and budget. Didn't have the budget to really pull off the special effects, which just told you that you were watching a television show. We've moved beyond that now, clearly. The special effects are spot on. They're great. They're fine. However, the live-action shows still have a TV feel. When you watch Obi Wan Kenobi, you know you're watching a TV show. For most people, it probably doesn't make a difference. The story was great in Obi-Wan. I'm thrilled with what I've seen so far in these 2 episodes. I am thankful that I don't know anything more about this series beyond what's been told in public. I did have a general idea of how these first 2 episodes played out, especially some things that you who have watched it already may have been surprised by, some elements that you may not have been aware of that I would have been surprised by if I hadn't already known what was going to happen in those first few episodes. That being said, I really enjoyed it, and I'm really glad that I don't know what's happening in the next, I guess, 5 episodes, or 4 episodes now, because we get 6 episodes in total. But there's a part of me that was like, man, I would have liked to have seen what this looked like on the big screen, because cinema just gives you just a different vibe and feel. And it's kind of weird to me. I don't know why. I in terms of the production, and I know they're using the volume, and we'll get to Andor in a moment, because Andor looks to be bucking this trend a bit. It's still, you can just tell there's a cinematic quality that's missing. You know it's on TV. That being said, didn't ruin my experience. Still loved it. Thought it was great. And I wasn't watching it going, this looks like it's on TV. It was simply because I'd gone and seen a blockbuster film in Top Gun Maverick hours before, just basically sleeping in between the two. And so it stuck out when I started watching Obi-Wan. If you've watched it already, you know, and this is not a spoiler, that before the first episode, they put together a really nice little recap intro to it. And that's not a spoiler to anything that's happening in the show. It's just they take basically Obi Wan Kenobi's story and they lay it out over the course of a few minutes as a prelude to the Obi Wan Kenobi show. And I really thought it was a smart move. There are people out there that aren't as familiar with this character, or maybe have only watched the prequels one time, and this was a nice refresher leading into the first episode. The writing on the show is fantastic. My expectations were high based off of the clips that we'd seen, specifically the exchange between Uncle Owen and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Ewan McGregor is fantastic. Thought the pacing was good, considering you're looking at a 6-episode series, and things can take their time. And I expect that going into live-action shows now, right? Mandalorian's different. Mandalorian plays out more like a video game, right? Every episode is a challenge of some sort. Mandalorian needs to go and figure something out, but before he has a goal in mind, but before he has that goal in mind, he has to do this one thing first. I have no problem with the way that plays out. That's what the show was designed to do. I dig it. What I like about Obi-Wan is that, and even Ewan McGregor has said as much in interviews, is that this is very much a telling a singular linear story. It's not Obi-Wan goes on adventures. No, there's a story being told here of Obi-Wan being hunted and the conflicts that he's dealing with as one of the few remaining Jedi and watching over Luke Skywalker. No spoiler there. And I'm really excited to see where the rest of these next few episodes go. The show did not disappoint me in any way, shape, or form. And as a matter of fact, my expectations were raised a bit. I liked how menacing the Inquisitors are. And again, the writing with them has been great. There were some interesting little things that I wasn't expecting over certain characters, and I liked the dynamic that played out. I just I give it an 8 or 9 out of 10, easy, for these first 2 episodes. And that second one ended, and even though I had to get to work for my show, I was like, man, I want more. I'm excited. We only have to wait until Wednesday to get the next episode. So as always, I want to hear from you. TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. Let me know your thoughts, and we'll get into more spoiler territory next week on the first 2 episodes, and kind of keep that theme going of putting out a show right around when the next episode drops, but keeping it spoiler free, but talking spoilers from the previous week. So during Star Wars Celebration, they had, surprisingly, and now I know why, they decided not to live stream the Lucasfilm Showcase panel. They showed a trailer for Willow. They talked, Harrison Ford came out on stage talking about Indiana Jones 5, which I'm excited about. I like that director quite a bit. Even if Harrison Ford is getting very much up there in age to be playing Indiana Jones, I believe he's in good hands with the writer and the director. But I was really kind of shocked that we were actually going to be starting the live stream for Celebration after that first panel. However, when Anthony Carboni and Andy Gutierrez came out, whom I love from Lucasfilm, they had a really unique stage set up where it ended up being its own thing, where they brought out guests, Dave Filoni, actors and actresses from Willow and from Mandalorian. Katie Sackhoff came out, and they showed all of the footage and art that was shared in the panel. So I get it now what Lucasfilm was doing and Disney were doing in keep the panel something special for the attendees there, where they get the added bonus of the conversations. Got to see John Williams conduct the new Obi Wan Kenobi theme, which I enjoy. I don't think it's anything spectacular. I wouldn't say it's the best John Williams work he's ever done, but it's John Williams, man. It's like pizza. You can't go wrong. It's good stuff. But I did like the setup, and I'm looking forward to watching more of what they have now, condensed it down to make sure that those watching at home are still getting the footage and the teases that the people attending the panels got, but the people at the convention are getting the full shebang, if you will. All right, speaking of which, getting into Andor, I was hoping we would get a teaser. We got a teaser, clocked in at just under a minute, or just under 2 minutes long, and I thought it looked fantastic. I have said for a while now that I think that Andor is a sleeping giant, that this show is going to knock out of the park. They've been working on this since they announced the launch of Disney Plus for a long time, shot on real locations along with the volume, been working on it for a long time now. And the teaser did not disappoint at all. It looks grand in scope. Also looks like it's telling a much larger tale, not what we get in The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett. Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett, we got these, smaller adventures, stories playing out. No, this looks like a straight up prequel to Rogue One. And as a matter of fact, we now know that Andor will be 24 episodes long, starting 5 years before Rogue One, with a break at 12 episodes, starting on August 31st. The first 1 through 12 will take place, again, 5 years before Rogue One, and episodes 13 through 24. And I don't know, as a matter of fact, maybe I can go and find that. Okay, so it looks like we'll get Mandalorian Season 1 this year, and then probably Mandalorian Season 2, I guess, next year. So I think Season 1 will be episodes 1 through 12, 5 years before Rogue One. Episodes 13 through 24 take us the other 4 years right up to Rogue One. As a matter of fact, Tony Gilroy, the showrunner and writer on Rogue One, who was, as I mentioned on last week's show, the individual that came in and did a lot of tweaking to Rogue One, said that it's going to go and lead right into Rogue One. The teaser trailer looks just like Rogue One in terms of the way that it's shot. I loved seeing Mon Mothma. We kind of it's been hinted that we'll get a bit of a backstory of Cassian Andor, meaning as much younger, so we'll get some flashbacks, and I think we actually saw that in the trailer. We'll see how Cassian Andor came to join the rebellion. As we mentioned or maybe I didn't mention last week, but during the week, Tony Gilroy had come out and actually said that Andor is going to actually change your expectations in the way you look at the story, which I think was interesting. But it does have this, at least in my view, this Game of Thrones type vibe to it. The voiceover from Cassian was really cool, talking about the Empire. A lot of little Easter eggs in there, some new vehicles, some updated versions of the Republic gunships and troop transports. One of the individuals who was working on the Death Star in Rogue One was there. The individuals in the white outfits, the scientists working on the Death Star, okay? On Edu, they were in there as well, seeing the Imperial Senate. It just a lot of really great visuals from this teaser that just had me really, really excited. And I can't help but wonder, if you've watched Foundation on Apple TV, if you haven't, by the way, you need to go watch that. Fantastic science fiction. But I can't help but wonder if they hired or if the individual who was in charge of ship design on Foundation works with Lucasfilm, because a lot of the new vehicle designs that I saw really looked a lot like what we saw in Foundation. Not out of the realm for Star Wars by any stretch, but some of the vehicles, especially the ones on Coruscant, just really kind of invoked this feel, because I thought the Foundation did a good job of kind of differentiating itself from Star Wars in terms of the look of the vehicles, just enough to where you knew you were looking at something different. A couple of the ships that I saw, for as much as I love ships, I talk about them a lot, from several of the new ships that I saw in the Andor teaser, I was like, wow, that could actually be lifted from Foundation. But the look, the feel, the vibe, this show is going to be cool. And one of the reasons, subjectively, for me that I'm excited for it is the same reason why I was excited for Obi-Wan, and that is we're getting away from the singular adventure storytelling that we got in Book of Boba Fett and The Mandalorian. Now, I know The Mandalorian had a through line, in it, with Grogu, getting Grogu back to his people and all that kind of stuff. But there were those episodes where you had to go off on these other side adventures that had nothing to do with the core of the story. And it looks like Andor is also going to be something that has a very sort of linear, if I'm using that word correctly, feel to it. So as you can tell, I'm excited for this show. I'll be watching that trailer a ton. And, it's right around the corner, too, with it coming out on August 31st. We're not going to have to wait too long for that show. All right, so beyond Star Wars Celebration, I got a couple of different articles here. One comes from Total Film, and the other from Empire Online that sheds some light on what's going to happen with the movies. I was right and wrong about my prediction last week. I first thought I was completely wrong about my prediction, but it turns out I was actually kind of right about my prediction. I was wrong from the standpoint that we have not as of yet gotten an announcement of a film coming out of Star Wars Celebration. I think if we were going to, it would have happened with the Lucasfilm panel yesterday, but we'll see. There is a Mando Plus panel taking place this week, and you never know when they may just drop some information out about the movie. But Empire Online wrote an article, and it goes like this. With Star Wars Celebration underway right now in Anaheim, California, there's activity aplenty in a galaxy far, far away. The first 2 episodes of Obi Wan Kenobi have now been released, says are imminent. Andor is now officially months away, August 31st release date. And there's more to come from The Mandalorian Season 3. Followed by Ahsoka. They did do a bit of an Ahsoka tease, just showed Rosario Dawson on set, nothing more than that. But while most of the Star Wars activity currently in the works is taking place in the proximity of the original trilogy and the prequel movies, this is where I get excited. It seems there's more to come from the sequel era of the Star Wars timeline, too. Kathleen Kennedy stated that the upcoming movies will be set closer to the time of Rey, Poe, and Kylo Ren than to young Luke Skywalker and Obi-Wan. Speaking to Empire at Celebration, Kennedy confirmed that the sequel era will be explored in the upcoming movies. We're moving further beyond the existing sequels as we look to our movie space. The sequel era is what we talk a lot about in terms of where we're going with our movies and just how far out that will go. That's very much the space we're concentrating on. The next confirmed Star Wars movie will be Taika Waititi's as yet untitled film, co-written by Christy Wilson Cairns, while Patty Jenkins' Rogue Squadron. That movie is currently undated, but is still in the ether. Kennedy also reiterated that Rian Johnson's trilogy, announced a long time ago, is not happening anytime soon. Ryan's had such a gigantic success with Knives Out that he's very committed to trying to get that done. So it'll be a while. As you know, we have to work 3 to 5 years in advance on what we're doing. So that's where it sits. Elsewhere, much of the Lucasfilm panel at Star Wars Celebration revolved around the current slate of Disney Plus series, from Obi-Wan to Andor to the Jon Watts just announced Skeleton Crew. You know, it's an ongoing Star Wars story that we're telling nonstop, says Kennedy. That's the way we think about it. Stay tuned for more coming out of Celebration. All right. On top of that, we got this interview that Total Film and Jack Shepard did. Following the presentation, they met with Kathleen Kennedy to discuss what's going on with the Star Wars films. Total Film asked, Star Wars Celebration has led to some very exciting new, but I would say there's a curious lack of talk about the movies. There were reports the next movie would be Taika Waititi's Star Wars film. Is that correct? And here is where I was right and here is where I was wrong. Kathleen Kennedy said, that's correct. Is that aiming, Total Film asks, is that aiming for 2023? Yeah, well, not 2023, but late 2023. The December 2023 release date? We haven't locked anything in. The future of movies is still in movement. She said, of course, they've been in movement all along. As we leave the saga, we have all this great, exciting work happening on the television side that informs us so much about where we are going. We want to be very intentional about that, and we have great talent that we're working with, people who care so deeply about what the next iteration of Star Wars is, about getting people back into movie theaters so we can really come out with the bang that's important to us. Okay, so let's stop here real quick. So my prediction on last week's show was that we would get an announcement of a film, possibly Taika Waititi's, that would still be coming out at the end of next year. Now, we didn't get the announcement officially, but this to me speaks to, yeah, we're getting close to getting that announcement. And a lot of sort of swirling around this and items that I saw talking about this apart from the article, but we're discussing this article. People were getting into Taika Waititi's schedule. Right now, there's a focus on, obviously, Thor Love and Thunder, which comes out on my birthday, July 8th, which I'm excited about. The movie looks great. Loved Ragnarok, one of my favorite Marvel films. So I imagine that right now Taika is probably still focused on that, even though the movie's done. And not wanting to go to Star Wars Celebration to discuss a possible Star Wars film coming out next year when the promotion right now is in full swing for Thor Love and Thunder, which is obviously a Disney product as well. Can they get a movie done between now and then? I absolutely think they can. As a matter of fact, I think that probably Taika Waititi's been working on it for a while. If they start shooting later this year, it is only May. We're heading up to June. But we still have quite a bit of time between now and the end of next year, and I think that Disney and Lucasfilm have really been able to sort of streamline their filmmaking process, using a lot of the volume, but using it on cinema. We know that it has been used in cinema. I think it has actually been used for Thor Love and Thunder. We know it was used on the Batman for a different studio. So I'm still very much of the opinion that we're going to get a Star Wars film at the end of next year. Kathleen Kennedy's comments here of, well, not 2023, but late 2023, I think that is to make sure that we set expectations that it's not going to be coming in May of 2023, but it'll become right at the end of the year. They still have that date locked in. And it also makes sense when it comes to the release schedule of the Avatar films. And I won't go into all of it again. I think that Disney wants to keep that Star Wars December date, and they don't want to wait too much longer to get a movie back in theaters. It's nice to see that this is still important to them. Now, getting back to this particular piece, before I do that, let me make one more comment. My last comment on that is, Top Gun Maverick is going to be a huge blockbuster, and people are going back to the theater now. And I think Disney knows this, and they know that they need to put stuff in theaters. I think streaming is most important, so they're going to keep pumping out streaming products. However, I do think that Disney and Lucasfilm know that movies are going to be important. They may not be as important as they used to be, but they are going to be important as people go back to the theater. All right, getting back to this article. Do you think that is a hesitancy perhaps in exploring the past Skywalker saga, talking about getting back to the theater? No hesitancy, said Kathleen Kennedy. So that's very much on your mind. Oh, yes. We need to create a whole new saga. That takes a lot. There's a lot of conversation around that. So that, again, also has me excited because they are thinking about a longer, bigger story and not one-off films. Obi Wan is coming out next, and there's been such a love for the prequels. Will there be more exploring of that era? To which Kathleen Kennedy said, that's exactly what we're going to do. Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni and John Watts, especially Dave's new show, Ahsoka, we realize that there's kind of been a pattern of a new generation coming along. All the kids of the kids end up loving the prequels, and their parents love the original movies. And now we have the sequels not very long ago. There'll be a whole generation attached to that. It's always important in Star Wars because it's one story that we can carry forward. That's the way we look at this. It is a persistent story that goes on. And sometimes we can look back and other times we can look forward. And that's the way we look at it as we talk about what those new projects might be, whether it's TV, whether it's movie, and eventually a game. So many people in the audience, they're now, they're there. Now they're moving from one to the next at Disneyland in the parks. You want to have that relate to the experiences you're having on TV, in the movies, or so though. That's weird. It becomes a very broad subject. Lastly, there were some quotes before this from yourself implying we won't see any more characters recast with younger actors. To which Kathleen Kennedy said, never say never. It's certainly not something that we're doing with any intention right now. We're still talking about Lando with Donald Glover, for instance, but I don't think we would intentionally just look back at some of the characters like Luke and Leia and whatnot and decide arbitrarily to do a story. There would have to be a really strong reason why. And finally, is there a future for Solo? To which she said, there's always a future for Solo. So, it sounds like the live-action shows on Disney Plus are going to be playing in the eras that we're familiar with. We know they're going to go pre-prequels. We know they're going post-prequels. And we know they're going post-original trilogy. It sounds like when they're looking at movies, they're looking at doing movies beyond the sequel trilogy, which has this fan super, super excited because that's what I want and what I want the most. What do you think? TalkShowNerd@gmail.com.
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
All right, first listener feedback we have this week comes from friend of the show, Miranda. Whatever the future of Star Wars holds, I hope that we will someday get to see little Grogu all grown up and become our future Luke. He really is the face of the future, not to mention he's helping Lucasfilm with their rent. Little joke there. But I am not kidding here. He has become such a huge presence in Star Wars, even to a point that we can't even get through a year without seeing him in a show. Star Wars needs Grogu, especially on a financial level. They need him. He's become more profitable than even Mickey Mouse. Every other character can come and go anytime, but Grogu is needed to be a part of the future. To be the face of the future and a leader. Sure, he's just an adorable, bouncy bubble of cuteness, but it's only a matter of time until he grows up to be a handsome young man, probably spent many years with Din Djarin, hopefully reforming the Mandalorians until that time comes. So, what else can Grogu do when Din Djarin is no longer around, or even Ahsoka lives that long enough as well? What can he become down the road? He's going to need allies. If there's anyone that we need to follow into the future and beyond, Grogu should be somewhere at the front and center of it. The little guy has a long, long road ahead of him. I wonder how much they knew that they had a winner on their hands with Grogu. And where are they going to put him during the sequel trilogy? That's what I would like to know. If they move Grogu past the sequel trilogy, right? How do they, look, there's a million different story beats that you could hit to put Grogu somewhere while the sequel trilogy is going on. But I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out. All right. Salvador Mendez. Thank you, Miranda. Salvador Mendez writes, I'm glad Lucasfilm was creating new content for Star Wars, but I'm a little disappointed. I thought that a continuation of the Skywalker saga would be part of the plan. I think if they're looking beyond the sequels to make films, I mean, the Skywalkers are always going to loom in the background, right? So while we may get new characters and new stories, there's going to be attachment there in some way, shape, or form. Dale Erdman writes, I liked Solo. I wish they'd give more actors a chance at different ages for those characters. Alden plays a great Han Solo, though he's no Harrison Ford. People will eventually accept it if they keep going to new actors. If they don't, they're stuck with CGI, which can always have an eerie feeling to me. Yep, the Uncanny Valley. Alec wasn't in the movies that much. Ewan owns, I said that last week on the show, Ewan owns the Kenobi character, but Alec was the original. People said the same thing about the prequel trilogy. Leia was a little too soon after her death to change, so what they did is acceptable. It is what it is. To that, thank you, Dale. J.O.B. writes, Lucasfilm knows the fans want Sebastian Stan to be Luke Skywalker. I'm sure even Mark Hamill would accept him. I was so excited when I saw Luke in The Mandalorian, but also a little sad because it wasn't Sebastian Stan. Yeah, I haven't personally heard an outcry for Sebastian Stan. I am with you. I think he could absolutely play Luke Skywalker. But he's getting older in age too. So, something obviously post Return of the Jedi I think would fit. But now that they've gone the route they have with the CGI Luke, I think that's going to be tough to transition over to a Sebastian Stan at this point in time. Lastly, I just want to say thanks again to She VP had written a really nice prayer last week mentioning my open heart surgery coming up on June 15th. And then she added that I ordered all 7 of your books today, and I can't wait to start them. Thank you, She VP, so much for that. I really do appreciate it. And with that, it wraps up the show. And as I do at the end of the show, for you newer listeners, I do write science fiction novels and just released the 7th book in my science fiction space opera series, Battle Planet, which is available now. Treat yourself, a friend, or a family member with sci-fi, written for adults, but great for ages 11 plus. Buy EMBARK Book 1 today, or any of the books in the series if you've already purchased Book 1, available in hardcover, paperback, and audiobook. Audiobook on Battle Planet Book 7 will be coming once I'm recovered from my surgery. As Earth faces its end, the fight to rule the stars begins. Taft Guardia picked the right day to upgrade his ship when fellow pilot Kate Amaro arrived, needing help investigating a cryptic message left behind by her late aerospace engineer father. Unaware that an industrial accident inside Earth's largest supplier of civilian and military spacecraft has set off an apocalyptic chain of events, they make a shocking discovery. As war erupts during the global evacuation, Earth's evacuees stand upon the brink of annihilation. Realizing the significance of what they found, with the help of a ragtag squadron of pilots, Taft and Katha might be humanity's greatest hope for survival among the stars. Do not miss this 2021 Tail Flick Discovery Sci-Fi Award-winning series. If you like your science fiction space opera epic, filled with romance and action and a little bit of pop culture set in the future on Earth as they venture out into the stars, then EMBARK is perfect for you. Go to Amazon.com. Search for EMBARK and Jon Justice. You'll find all the books there. Again, hardcover, paperback, and audiobook. And ebook. Of course, ebook. You can pick up the ebook for book 1 for just 99 cents. How great is that? Also, mynerdworld.net. You can go there as well, and there's links right there on the homepage to where you can go and pick up the books, and that's how you can support my Nerd World. All right, that wraps up the show for this week. Unless there's any major breaking news, I'll be back again next week as we talk more Obi-Wan. Can't wait to hear from you and what you thought about Obi Wan Kenobi and the first couple of episodes. TalkShowNerd at gmail.com. As always, I hope wherever you are, you have a great long weekend for one with Memorial Day weekend, but you are happy, you are healthy, and you are safe. I'll talk to you again next week. Bye.
The Force will be with you. Always.
My Nerd World.